David had been an overnight security guard for 2 years. It was a quiet job that he enjoyed, but he was always a bit uneasy when it was time for his night shift. It was like something out of a horror movie, being all alone in the darkness of the night. He had always been a bit of a scaredy cat, and he had grown to dread the night shift more and more as time went on. One night, he decided to take a stroll around the building to check for any suspicious activity. As he was walking, he noticed something strange in the shadows of the alleyway. He strained his eyes to try and make out what it was, but it was too dark to see. He took a few steps closer and suddenly, he felt a cold chill down his spine. He froze in his tracks and his heart raced. He slowly inched closer and closer, until he was standing right in front of the figure. He could now see that it was a person, but it was not like any person he had ever seen before. The person was hunched over and seemed to be wearing a dark cloak. He stood there, petrified, and the figure slowly raised its head and stared directly at him. David felt like he was about to collapse and he desperately wanted to turn and run, but he couldn't move. The figure slowly stepped out of the shadows and revealed its ghastly face. It had no eyes, only a gaping black hole where its eyes should have been. The figure reached out and grabbed David by the arm and he let out a blood-curdling scream. Suddenly, the figure began to disappear and David fell to the ground in a heap. The next morning, David had no recollection of what had happened the night before and he was relieved to be alive. He was never the same after that night, but he still went back to work. Whenever it was time for his night shift, he felt a chill down his spine and he could still see the figure in the shadows of the alleyway. The moral of the story is that we should always be aware of our surroundings and trust our instincts. Even when we feel scared and helpless, we should never give up and take the necessary steps to protect ourselves.